I don't think it's going to freeze, but I just want you to have this in advance. We'll put it up at back agent or whatever. But if you have a listing or you have something under contract, we need to be aware as the realtor what happens when there are freezes, especially with unoccupied properties. We're notorious. Come by for the first freeze and drive down Heights Boulevard and you'll see all the sprinklers that are off because the little attachment to the sprinkler freezes, whatever, and it falls out of there, and the water's shooting out of our building and the Esplanade or whatever. But if you're representing a seller and they're out of the country or it's vacant or whatever, we need to first alert them. It's their responsibility to take some precaution, but we probably have some responsibility to help them also. I care less about the plants as I do about the pipes being wrapped or the water being turned on so that we don't have an overflowing water leak when it falls out the next day or whatever. It's pretty disheartening to finally get a buyer, finally find a house, finally get out of the option period, finally get past the appraisal, and the damn thing floods the day or two before closing, and you ain't got no money because you work for free because you're going to be in a big old huge fight over who's going to repair all this damage when the first floor buckles over here, or the fear that it's going to buckle, and the buyer wants $40,000 for repairs, the seller doesn't want to give anything. So I mean, in order to be proactive, try and keep aware of potential problems that can result from water, especially in the result of not the freeze, but the thaw after the freeze or whatever. So I just want to make you aware of that. We will meet again next Tuesday, and we think in conjunction with that, we're going to have a little potluck luncheon or whatever, a little Thanksgiving gathering or whatever. I will provide 95% of the things. We're going to have a little sign-up sheet, and if you want to sign up by the end of the week because you want to bring something, Grandma's favorite pumpkin bread recipe or something, that's fine. But don't feel obligated to bring something just because you feel obligated to do so. I'll provide all the luncheon or whatever. But if someone wants to bring pumpkin oatmeal raisin cookies, then that's fine with me too. So Eric has a sign-up sheet. Let us know by Friday, and then we'll fill in the rest from there. Not much else going on in November with us that I can think of or whatever. And then just remember that the Christmas party is on the 13th. Soon we're going to need to know a number of people. Of course, you're all invited, your significant other, I don't care who that is, it could be your BFF, it doesn't matter. I just need an idea. Joe is cooking again here, and so he needs to know how many we're cooking for. 70 or 120, there's a big difference for some of those numbers or whatever. So there'll be another sign-up sheet for that at the end of the month there. Kirby office, if you haven't been, is up and going. Thanks those of you that are attending over there. I think we've had better attendance lately or whatever. Had some movement or whatever. Dusty, you got a walk-in or something. I heard that was good. So there's a few things we think you just need to know if you pop over there. Now we're officing over there 7 days a week. If Sandra is not there, Aaron is there. If you haven't met Aaron, please meet Aaron. He works here some and at the Kirby office some or whatever. But Sandra, give them a little up-to-date on things they need to know about the Kirby office.
Well, first off, everybody needs to get a key because there might be times that someone's not there to come in. Or if you want to meet a client there in the evening, we stay open until 6. So if you need to come in after that, please get a key.
Who has the keys?
Paula has keys.
Paula has the keys. I had a few, mine are gone, but I will get some more. We have an alarm going in at some point.
Later this week.
But we'll let you know. I'll send an email out with all that information.
It'll be the same as this code, you know, so you don't need to know a new code. It'll just be tied to this one.
When you're in the area, stop by so I can show you how the lights work because they are a little bit different so you don't accidentally turn the light off that's on the sign outside at night. I need to show everybody how to use the little conference area that we're going to be using upstairs. You can get on the laptop and it come up on the TV. I'm still waiting for a piece to make that happen, but I do need everybody to know how to use it. It's very easy, but you know. So if
you're downstairs working in the bullpen area and your clients want to write a contract, you would just go upstairs where we have the 2 desks And you could, there's laptops there, of course, that you can pull on, but if you want to show them the MLS or a map or the contracts or whatever, you could pull up the flat screen TV and do that information.
Can we have like a little training day that we learn all these things once everything's in
Yes,
place?
we're gonna meet over there, we think the first Tuesday in December instead of here. And that'll be another opportunity that we'll have. But if you're over in that area, she's happy to give individual.
And I need to show you where things are located, you know, the listing packages, the buyer packages, you know, the supplies, or anything you might need, you know, where the laptops are kept. Right now, we're locking them up, yeah, restrooms, that kind of stuff. And I'm really worried about children being upstairs on the railing, so I would just say no kids upstairs, because that railing is still
If we meet there during the day, like where should we park?
You know, if there's just absolutely no place to park at CVS. You know, we have the 2 parking spots out front. If you're running in and picking up something, you can just park right there for 2 minutes or whatever. Upstairs, behind what is the old El Paso Import Company, we're negotiating for some parking spots there. But along Times, there generally are parking spots, Times Boulevard.
On the street?
On the street.
Just don't park too close to the fire hydrant.
Yeah, that was $115. Okay, any other questions about Kirby? Okay, thank you, Sandra. Reminder, we've got these thankful cards, the kind of Thanksgiving message or whatever, that are available for you to handwrite and mail out to your clients. We sent these to all of our clients for life last year or whatever. They're kind of imprinted with a very thankful message, little Boulevard Realty logo. And they're designed for you to handwrite a little note, especially if your clients maybe bought something this year, or you just want to say something thankful. There's a couple hundred of these cards that are available. We are mailing out to all of the clients for life, anyone that's ever bought a house, if they were a buyer or a seller, we're mailing them later this week an announcement about the Kirby office, just so that they all have that information. About a week later, we're mailing everyone on the Clients for Life another little thankful message or whatever. It's kind of tied to the holidays in general. Thank you for you, thank you for a great year, thank you for being in Houston. It's kind of an all-encompassing Thanksgiving, happy holidays message. And then we're going to mail them right after the holidays their invitation to the Toast to the New Year or whatever. So all of the Clients for Life are going to get 3 mailings from us in the next 30 or 40 days there.
What
So,
constitutes a client for life?
if they bought or sold something, they're in our database.
Okay.
We have their address.
Yeah.
You know, if you want, we'll print extras of all these things and make them available, and we'll send you the email version or whatever. But if they bought a house, they became a client for life. If it was your listing and your client moved to Africa and someone else bought the house from Amanda Anhorn, we still log that person under you as a client for life, because we want them, since you were the listing agent, if they go to sell 2 years from now and their sister-in-law agent is no longer an agent, we want them first to go back to you. So they're all geared to, you know, your clients. And you can always edit a couple times a year. We email you your Clients for Life. You can edit, you know, there again, if you a huge fight with someone, perhaps we want to take them off the list, or if you want to add someone, I add some of my closest friends or whatever, just so that they get the invitations to the 14 Pews events or the Toast of the New Year. They may not yet have bought a house, but they might buy a house, and they refer people to me. So you could add some if you want your Clients for Life there. Don't know, we mentioned before, just mention again, I don't know if you've seen all the Berkshire Hathaway changes there. That's just an industry change. They put their little signs up. Their color scheme is Cabernet and Chardonnay. Do you like those colors? I thought that was interesting. That's there. But they made the switch to Berkshire Hathaway Home Source Anderson Properties. You could say all that fastly 3 times. Which nothing to do with us. You just need to be aware. Once was Suzanne Anderson Properties, which was Better Homes and Gardens, which was Anderson Prudential, which is now Berkshire Hathaway. And their own, Berkshire Hathaway owns Real Living, and they own Home Source. So they own the same company that owns Beth Wolf's franchise. Beth Wolf is an independent franchisee of New Living. Michael Huff is Real Living. Michael Huff is a franchisee through Home Source, all under the same umbrella of Berkshire Hathaway there. So, as opposed to reality that owns Century 21, Coldwell Bank, or Sotheby's, and all those others. We've had that little lesson once before, just so you know. I am having an open house today from 12 to 2 at my Omar listing. If you haven't been making it to open houses lately, remember, one good idea for realtors, especially if you're new, is to get your name out there by going to these other open houses, especially in the neighborhoods that you want to work. So you might start making some appearances if you have some spare time for that sort of thing there. Okay, I want to talk about some headlines and things we're making available. This was in the Sunday paper, not sure that you saw it. This is basically a recap of 2013 with the forecast of 2014. I think several of the items are significant. We're going to make these available, so if you go on a listing packet where you might add the MLS statistics we went over 2 weeks ago, I think this is another source of information that you might just put into a listing packet. And we've cut and pasted our way for the graphs because I think the graphs are the easiest way to make it an impact. So I want you to make sure that you understand, compared to the last year, apartment occupancy rate is up. It's not up significantly, it's about from 90% to 91.1%, but it's the amount of rental unit occupancy is up. What's more important is that the actual rental has increased by about 15%. So the rate has gone up from one year to the next, and they increased occupancy by raising the prices. And I think you're going to continue to see rising rental rates. Two things are happening. Taxes go up, which causes rising rental rates, and old apartment complexes are being torn down and being replaced with newer, more elaborate apartments, which will cause an increase of the deal. If you just take the Heights areas and you're tearing down old apartment complexes and you're going to get brand new apartment complexes on very expensive land, then the rate of, the apartment rental rates will go up, which help people go buy a house instead of renting. If you're going to rent for $2,200 a month, you might look at buying a bungalow for $300 and figure out if you could have a less down payment, you might could get in and your monthly payment be similar. So for our industry, rising apartment rental rates are a good thing. I mean, it encourages people to buy a house or whatever. Housing permits are up significantly. They're up 18%. Remember, 2012 was a good year. 2011 was okay. Land was cheap. Buy a lot of land in 11. Build a few things in 12, sell them all. You're going to build a lot more in 13. You're going to build a hell of a lot more in 14 or whatever. So permits are up, which gives us an indication that if we're permitting more, we're going to have a little more to sell next year, right? I mean, you have to start with this sort of thing. Home sales definitely up 23%. So this is activity month to month. So September versus September, 4,900 versus 6,100. We've talked about that a fair amount. These are actual starts. You can permit something and not start it till the end of 2014, but the actual starts from this September to last September were up 23%. Wow. Okay? So I mean, I think this is, you can see it all along Washington Avenue, you can see it all along the east side. I mean, these are home starts that have actually started. And prices, again, the same thing. One more graphic of the average price going up by 10%.
I've heard stats about the influx of people to Houston, but I haven't seen things.
100,000 people.
Like, in what time?
1 year.
Is that for this year?
That's for this year, September to September.
What's the projection?
120,000, the next 12-month period.
And what's the predicted housing next year?
They're not saying that there's, in this article and others, they're not saying there'll be a shortage. They're just saying there'll be, because the inventory is going to increase, because people will be afford to sell that have been upside down as the prices rise. As their income, if they recover from the recession, they save a little more money, they'll be less likely to hold on to the house they have and more apt to go buy a slightly larger house. We were in an emotional decision that we shouldn't sell our house because it's not trendy to move up from 2,500 square feet to 4,200 square feet. Where it was from 2001 to 7, everyone wanted to move up. People hunkered down a little bit because they just were more conservative. But I think you'll see a little more inventory, a little easier lending, a little easier emotional of, okay, I've survived, let's buy a car and let's buy a bigger house or whatever. Sheila Jackson Lee last night, I know she's your favorite politician, there again at a meeting out of that talking about banking reform one more time. The pendulum in the recession, we shifted way over here, made it too difficult for the banks to lend, and now we're going to shift back, and hopefully you meet in the middle, not way back over where we were, to ease up lending more in 2014 so that you'll see more 5% down loans or 3% loans or stated income loans. I'm not saying we should go all the way back to the way we were before, but I'm saying they got to make it a little bit easier for the average person to buy a house, not someone with a spare couple $100,000 in their bank account, but for the average person who does not have 40% of these reserves, you know, for the down payment and the reserves. So I think you'll see that easing up, which will help. It'll help the lower end more than the higher end. So the $250,000 to $450,000 buyer can be just a little bit easier, I think, for the self-employed, for the younger lawyer, the young doctor. So I think you'll see that kicking in. They really passed the legislation again to just keep delaying the implementation. They'd like to get their $685 billion fine from Bank of America before they make it easier for them to turn right around and do the same thing again.
So what areas are gonna have the highest growth of all these?
You know, any area inside the loop is going to have higher density, I think, you know. So I think it's well spread out. As Westview is booming, Montrose will boom, Heights will boom, Oak Forest, the Woodlands will boom just because of that growth. Energy Corridor, Cinco Ranch, all that area will continue to boom or whatever. So, of course, the largest growth is further out. It's Fulshire. It's way out there. It's Willis. It's the other side of Lake Conroe. You know, but I don't know that that impacts any of us. We're not going to go show on the other side of Conroe for people who want to work at ExxonMobil. I don't think that's who we are. But, you know, I think it's still the weakest. League City, NASA, Clear Lake. They still haven't, they need full. I mean, you're talking about again, they need a budget and full funding so NASA can plan for 5 years. Right now, they don't know what the budget's going to be in January, so they can't start anything because they've stopped 15 things over, and no researcher, no scientist has any stability in that industry because they don't know how the funding is. The sequester does that all the time. It prohibits long-range planning because you don't know what the budget is 3 months from now. So if we could ever get to a budget over there, then they would fully fund a few of these things like NASA, you know, or the Port of Houston, or something that would allow for continued redevelopment. I mean, they were talking about the dredging of the Port of Houston, which is an annual event, cost $120 billion, and its impact is $4 trillion on the Houston economy, and we don't know where the money's coming from in January. But the damn thing fills up, and they can't ride a boat through there unless they dredge the Port of Houston.
They never stopped dredging.
They stopped dredging because they don't
No,
have
they
any
never stopped dredging.
I know, but it's temporary funding on a month-to-month basis. It's like I said, all right, I'm going to give you your house payment today for December, but I don't know if I'm going to give it to you in January. How much stability can you have? You know, so they have to have some long-range growth. I don't want to get sidetracked on politics there, but I think if we ever got a budget, which surely we're going to get one at some point, you would see some of those areas like NASA and the port have greater stability, which might free up those areas a little bit more. East side's going to boom. This area tied to the train's going to boom. Spring Valley and that little section, I think, is poised for greater development. Bel Air's been soft. It'll, you know, free up a little bit, I think, over there. Okay, so these statistics are available. We'll probably email you these little deals. I think it's just nice to have if you're going on some sort of listing appointment in the relatively near future. We will soon be doing another Gracious magazine. All right, here's our Gracious story. There's a sign-up sheet for Gracious. If you want a full-page ad, it's going to be $500. If you want a half-page, which is 2 listings and some information about you, it's going to be $300. If you don't have any listings, you can always use some of mine, or we can create some for you. Everyone's going to be in the magazine, so you don't have to buy into it. And if we get more and more people, this current issue is 32 pages. I'm hoping that we increase to 36 or 40 pages. But we're going to, you can sign up now, and you can sign up until December 10th, at which time we're going to prepare the proof, We're gonna make the final edits on December 17th. The magazine's gonna be printed and we're gonna distribute at our sales meeting in January on the 7th or whatever. So we're gonna try and do better at putting these out at least 4 times in 2014. Yes?
Where do we find out what stories are in it?
We're going to, next Tuesday, I think if you're interested in any type of story or promotion, let me know over the next week. And next Tuesday, we're going to describe it a little bit more. But there'll be something like the new office in Kirby and Westview. There'll be some highlighted things, just like we've done before, pets or pocket neighborhoods or things of that nature. So the first option is, what is your interest? I'll focus on that sort of thing if I have someone that wants to work on that sort of thing.
Where is this? Is this mailed out?
This isn't really mailed out. It's really distributed through the agent. So we put it out here. We take it to open houses. We use it as a listing tool. We put it out a few places. Wherever you want to put it out, every agent that buys them will be guaranteed a certain number of issues, probably 400 or 500. And you can put them at your nail salon, your hair place, whatever you wanted or whatever, but there's always plenty available for use there. So, I don't know that you're going to sell 1,000 houses from it or anything, but you have to have something. If you're Bob Besborn and you go on a listing appointment, you got to have something else to put in your listing packet about yourself. So, here's Bob can take his little gracious and put this in his listing packet with some of the other information, and it's giving Bob an opportunity to say, here's one way that we can promote these houses. You've got to be realistic. Like all printed publications these days, you're getting a call on a house that's probably sold, so you have to do a good job of marketing yourself and saying, that one just sold last month, it's over $10,000 over the asking price, but I'd love to work with you and help you find the home of your dreams. Could I add you to my email list and send you some listings as they come up? And start with the conversation and see if you can't turn one of these people into a buyer. Any questions about Gracious? We'll talk about this again next week. Don't know if you saw this. This is the latest, greatest magazine to come out in Houston. Everyone wants to be a magazine publisher these days. These are my friends, Becky and Mark Standridge. They live here on Oxford. This is their magazine. It's just being sent out. We did have a 2-page ad here in this magazine, and they will distribute. Ultimately, they'll grow to about 60,000. I think this issue is about 30,000, and they're distributing. They have 180 locations currently spread out through the city, and then they'll do a pretty good job of sending it out. I think it's a very nice magazine. I think there's a lot of nice magazines. One of the things about this magazine is this little app that you can download, and it tells you how to do it. I would not know how to do that myself, but other people do.
Really.
And if you take your iPhone or your deal and you put that little app right here, wherever there's one of these little emblems, then there's an interactive deal. It's like Harry Potter over there. You put it over there and Harry starts going around playing Quidditch, okay? Same thing. You can click on this deal and then it's me at a party. It's me talking down in my wine cellar. It's interactive activities. If you go to this one here, it leads you to our newest listings at Boulevard Realty automatically. It takes you into our website and up to the newest listings that we have there. But they're all a little bit different, and almost all of these businesses, you can click here on Buchanan's and it'll take you to their weekly special or whatever they've got going on there. So their interactive part of the magazine is quite nice. The magazine is free, okay? And inside the magazine, you can subscribe. Anyone that signs up for this will get a 2-year subscription, okay? They targeted affluent homes in markets exactly where we want to market. They go all the way out to the Woodlands, they go all the way down to Bel Air, got all of Montrose and Westview, and all of that little area, a little bit of Champions Forest, and up to Exxon's campus and the Woodlands over there. And anyone, according to their statistics, that had a house greater than $750,000 or income was greater than $150,000 got one of these, will get one of these in the mail, okay? Everyone's going to get, if you met that criteria of the database, then you're going to get issue 1, issue 2, and issue 3 automatically. Then if they subscribe, which is free, the subscription is free, they'll continue to get it for the next 2 years, okay? So they were hitting a demographic that I wanted to go hit. They subscribe to that little service. It costs them about $25,000 for that database that they use or whatever. And they've offered me the opportunity to go and use that database. I don't really know exactly what I'm going to do with that, but if there's something in particular, if we want to hit Bel Air or Montrose and we want a list of those addresses or we want the labels or whatever, we could go and get some of that information. They'll share their database with us. They did happen to do a story about Joe and I, if you haven't seen. It's a little 6-page story. One of those Sundays when I was not available to talk to you, I was drinking wine and taking these photos because it took about 7 hours to take all these photos. But it is a nice little article about us, if you're so inclined to read. And then tied to Bayou City and one of our charitable deals, Boulevard Realty is sponsoring this event, which is on January 16th. It is at our house. It costs $75. All of the money goes to the summer house. And this is a taste, tour, and talk. It's 5 courses of food and 5 different wine pairings and talk by Joe and I about the food and the wine. So it should be a fun event if someone's interested.
When is it?
This is on January 16th.
Okay.
6 to 9.
Talk a little bit about the summer house.
The summer house is run by Donna and Paul Pouget, whose daughter Summer is a special needs child, and she has gone through the public school system, you're able to stay in longer. So as she approached 19 and 20 and 21, these kids that have tremendous needs are a huge drain financially on families, emotionally on family, physically on families. And what the Pougets wanted to do was to create an environment where young adults of that age, it could be 18 to 35 really, could come together with their peers and give the families a break so that the mother could go get her hair cut. That they could run to the grocery store. It's almost like Mother's Day Out for special needs adults that are of that age. It's on Arlington in the 1800 block. They restored a bungalow there. They have field trips. The young adults go bowling. They go to the park. They go to Walmart. They just do things that's designed to get them out, interact with one another, which is wonderful for the kids. It's really designed to give the families a little break who just are 24 hours a day, exhausted with,
Is it funded only by people who are paying, or is it?
It's fully funded by donations and things of that nature. Private funds. Our shredding service, which we pay $50 a month for, that is the summer house. That is a project they do to raise revenue. So they shred that deal. There's a fundraiser Thursday that we'll have at the Decorative Center. They have an advisory board, and they have which is mostly medical people, and then they have a board of directors, and they raise money.
Is it a nonprofit?
It is totally nonprofit. It's totally nonprofit.
So your donation would
Your
be-
donation is tax
Yeah, I know.
free. Yeah, that's correct. So that's that. There's plenty of these Bayou City magazines, and we're taking more to the Kirby office.
How much are advertisements in that magazine? Are they?
These advertisements are about 75% the cost of Houston Modern Luxury. Okay, so it's not cheap though. These ads basically are. These 2 pages cost me about $6,000
For 2 pages.
for 2 pages. They gave me a little break, I'm sure.
They're not doing our block anymore, right?
They're not doing our block. Our block is still available, but they do not have anything to do with our block here. There is still an our block for the Heights area. Okay. Next, any questions so far? All right, I just want to talk about some other issues and contracts that have come up here lately, and to make sure, because we haven't discussed lately, Sandra or Frank, I got it down here. If you have an issue,
Where's the on button? Where's the on button?
so there are issues that come up, and of course, you're always going to call me, and I'm going to be your first line of questioning and answering, and Brandon is available, and Paula is available next, or whatever. But certain issues come up, and they're usually questions that relate to, they're not specific questions, they're usually legal things or whatever. So we're going to talk about some legal issues today. And you got to remember, we're governed by the Texas Real Estate Commission, so we have a governing body over here that we report to, and we have a code of ethics tied to the Texas Real Estate Commission. Then there's the Texas Association of Realtors that has an opinion on legal issues. There's the National Association of Realtors that has an opinion on legal issues. There are title companies that are not governed at all by any of those entities. They're governed by the Texas Board of Insurance. And then there are just individuals that have rights, and there's a property code about things. So often it's very confusing who has jurisdiction over these sort of things. So in the Texas Association of Realtors, on their website, which you can go to, they make lawyers available, the legal hotline, and a number of you use the legal hotline from time to time. Just so you know, in all full disclosure, every time you call the legal hotline, I get a notice that an agent at my firm called the legal hotline or whatever, because I'm the broker and I'm the one that's responsible. If you screw up over here, I'm the one that gets in trouble. You rarely get in trouble or whatever. So Bob Esborn uses the legal hotline all the time. I mean, it's frequent throughout the year that Bob will have a question and he'll call the legal hotline. They'll let me know that he called the legal hotline, which is perfectly available. 98% of the time, I don't even bother calling Bob about it because I'm assuming Bob got the answer that he wanted, or if he didn't, he'll ask me. So it's not like I'm intrusive into your life or whatever, but I just wanted to have full disclosure. They do notify me if you call them or whatever. But when you're calling the legal hotline at TAR, you're getting TAR's reference point also. It's not the only reference point to that. I think I want to make that up. But there are issues that come up, and I just want to go over a couple of them. Jim had one earlier this last week or whatever, where they had a contract, it was accepted, it was executed, it was going to one title company, they switched along the way and switched the title company by a form of an amendment or whatever, and the earnest money didn't get deposited in whatever manner the seller thought it should have been. And they turned around and notified Jim and myself as the broker that the contract was null and void and was no longer, it was never in effect because the earnest money wasn't deposited in whatever time frame they thought it should have been. And we've gone over it here. It's very clear. While you have a responsibility to deposit the earnest money in a timely manner, whatever that means, you're under contract without earnest money, okay? You are fully enforced, your contract is enforceable, you don't have to have earnest money. The courts determine you need some form of consideration. There's a lot of things that make up consideration. Time, energy, effort, or the removal of a house from the MLS is the consideration that a seller would have. If you take it off the market and put it over into OP, that is a consideration that you're under contract, right? You don't have to pay $1 for that. $1 is not often deemed to be an appropriate amount of consideration. There's lots of ways that you have consideration. So I'm familiar with this task. It's not like this is the only person in a thriving economy that wants to try and get out of a contract by saying that earnest money had to be deposited in some time frame. But to be clear, so I'm familiar with how it works. Generally, I would just go talk to the broker or whatever and see what we have to work out. I'm notorious for cutting and pasting from this little section and sending it right on over to them. So I want to make sure they understand how their association and the legal field for their association feels on the matter. But I think it's very good. When I was new or I had issues, this little website has all kinds of things. There's 120 different items, and it's got legal items on here. So it's a very good resource if you've never used it before. Okay? So if you just click to earnest money, it has, remember I'm the least technical over here, so it has some common things about earnest money and the response from the legal people at TAR. We don't have to go over all this little section. It's really for you later. But I think it makes it fairly clear. In the earnest money section of the contract, and that's why I gave us the contract, paragraph 5, there is no time deadline of when the earnest money should be deposited. It's It's clearly deposited in a timely manner. If the buyer is in Australia and they docu-sign the contract and they either can't get to wire the money, or it's a federal holiday, or it's 24 hours later, and you do it on Friday and Monday's a holiday, well, clearly the soonest they could wire the money would be the following Tuesday, okay? If they say they're going to put the money in FedEx and they're going to FedEx the money, a check or whatever from Australia, then a reasonable time frame would be several days later or whatever. If someone just doesn't have any checks, if they're just moved here, they're here on a home buying trip or whatever, and they don't have it, and they have to get back to Seattle and get a check and FedEx it back, those are all reasonable. The court system determines that's reasonable. You don't have to have the money in hand. Title company doesn't have to have the money in hand for you to have an effective contract, whatever. It doesn't say anywhere that you have to deposit the money in a certain time frame. It clearly doesn't say it. Just a reasonable time frame is what the courts have determined. Now, as the realtor, that's the mumbo jumbo of the Texas court system over here. Ethically, you have a responsibility to get the earnest money to the other side as quickly as you can. So the likelihood is that you can get in way more trouble than your buyer if the buyer doesn't write the check for the earnest money in a timely manner. So I'm not saying that ethically you don't have some responsibility to get it to the other side, either the title company or the listing agent, in a reasonable time frame for the industry. The same night, that's not reasonable anymore.
3 days.
Yeah, a couple days is generally fine, or a full explanation. He made out, client was here, made out a check to USA Title, you changed it to Great American Title, he's got to get back, he doesn't have those checks with him, he's going to be in Seattle on Monday, he'll FedEx it on Tuesday, I'll have it on Wednesday. If you just send him an email, that's very reasonable. Copy the title company, copy the other agent, that's a reasonable time frame. So there is no obligation to deposit the money, you don't have to send the check. Now, it doesn't mean clearly that if you're the agent, you say, we are not going to sign the contract until you deliver the earnest money. That's reasonable. That's the art of negotiation. So the other agent can require the earnest money check in consideration for signing and creating an effective date. That's
Yeah, if
just
the seller says, I don't
negotiation.
want to see anything you don't have earnest money with, don't bring it.
That's
That's what you
right.
do.
But once it's signed,
Right.
and you didn't have the earnest money to them, you don't have to rush right over there and miss your Texan football game and get it there within an hour. There's no obligation that it be that way for the earnest money. And clearly, you are under contract without earnest money. It says it right here. There's the court cases that are involved. If the juries have determined it, it's here for you to read about.
So what about how the deal I was doing with the urban living people, how they shop around and they really don't want to put earnest money down until they find that other person, although they want the contract?
I think, if you don't have any other choice and you're the seller, you can let them do that. If you're a typical seller, you're going to say no. If you're going to shop it, put up a certain amount of money so that we know that you're real. Anyone will shop it for free. I can shop it around all day there's no obligation. But it's the art of negotiation, I think. But typically you put up something, and just like you did, after a certain period of time, shit or get off the pot. Put up your $30,000 and tell me that you're real. And if you're not, then you weren't really real. That's how it works. Now, I want to be clear, back in the option period though, okay, it's not treated the same. It clearly says that time is of the essence, which is the legal mumbo jumbo that says you got to perform under this deadline or you no longer have the unrestricted right to terminate. So we're way more sensitive about you getting the option fee over to the other side and getting it receipted by someone. And we're, as an industry, notoriously lax for this sort of thing.
No.
We're used to just sending these option fees with the earnest money to the title company, or they sit over here in a desk or in the file forever or whatever, and it's not that big a deal until the marketplace stresses up like it does now, and you got one guy over here under contract for 500, and you got a backup for 525, and you never delivered the option fee, and you inspect and you ask for $5,000, they're going to tell you you didn't have the unrestricted right to terminate because your agent did not perform and get the option fee in to the other side within the designated time zone. Okay, and you can cost your client any amount of negotiation for repairs. Now, our attorneys have looked into this because it's not like we haven't had any issues with this issue coming up also. So there are still plenty of other ways that I could probably get the buyer out of the contract, okay? If you just didn't deliver the option fee and your guy doesn't want the property, I can probably get you out just fine over property condition. But I have no ability to negotiate the repairs. I can probably get you out of the contract, but I can't really negotiate repairs because I didn't have any ability to negotiate repairs if we didn't pay for the consideration for that. So yeah, I want to be real clear, you have an obligation to get that option fee receipted within 2 days after the effective date.
It's the most important part.
It's the most important part.
Yeah.
It's definitely the most important part. And it can be signed by anyone. Aaron and Kobe and Eric are receiving option fees all the time. Someone brings it over here because we're better off signing than we are not signing. We leave us vulnerable. So if another agent comes over here with the option fee, we're going to sign for it.
So are you cool with the title company doing it?
If they will,
I know
yes.
some will.
So they call me.
Will, so that's why I use
Commonwealth
Veritas.
will too.
Yeah.
They will too for me. So yes, I have no problem if someone will just receipt it on your behalf or whatever. It's
Good.
fine.
Sometimes you have to direct the title company.
No, I know.
Yes.
That's why
You
I
can't
have
just let it go to the title company and sit there and no one
No.
ever sign it, which is
I
our
know.
next biggest problem of all these things going to the title company and they receipt the earnest money and no one wrote in the effective date. How are we going to truly determine what day is the effective
No,
date?
right in the effective.
You've got to write in the effective date. I'm
Oh, no.
serious. At least 10% of the contracts that we have go
No
through here a
way.
month do not have an effective date.
No
At
way.
least 10% still today. And I preach about it all the time. But you gotta have an effective date. Or we have to be able to determine what one is. Okay, so clear understanding about earnest money. Clear understanding about effective date. Clear understanding about option fee. This deal is that this little website is very good if you've never gone there to look at it. I think you have to have a login, so you have to create a login or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, all this commission stuff and you know, it says 2%, you write 3%, or there's nothing on there. You don't have to write anything about compensation. It's clearly dictated by the MLS and not the contract. It's clearly dictated by that. So it doesn't matter if you're offering 2% and someone else writes 3 in the contract, doesn't matter. Court system says it doesn't matter. We're not a party to that contract, really. This is the compensation agreement between realtors is dictated by the MLS and not a real estate contract. Okay? So that's probably an interesting one to read. Representation and intermediary, this minimum services and how it works is fairly interesting in here. The as is, I don't know how many times I got to explain this to people or whatever. I mean, we just keep explaining it. It's bold over there, it's bold as it can be, and it still doesn't matter. Yes, the property could be as is, but the buyer has the right to inspect, negotiate repairs, ask for anything that they want. If we discover something new, clearly, I mean, they can renegotiate that. It doesn't matter that it says as is or whatever. If you take it as is and the sellers are hiding something, they know there's a nuclear bomb under the house and they don't tell us there's a nuclear bomb under the house. Yes, we took it as is, but you hid the fact that there was a nuclear bomb under the house.
As is just in that first moment.
That's right. I mean, there's a responsibility. That doesn't mean they have to take it and dispose of whatever. I mean, there's obligations on both sides.
As is the understanding of the house as is. When you discover something new, it's
That's
not
right.
as is.
It comes directly out of the property code of how it works. Yes, Bradley?
I have a question. I've seen this in a contract and I was just like, it almost blew my mind. Okay, so
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
in the section 2 where they write, you know, not supposed to write subject to inspections.
It clearly shows you that you're not supposed to. I mean, cut and paste and send it to them, but.
Yeah, oh yeah. But I've seen where they write, you know, subject to termite inspection and if found, termites to be treated. So is that valid? Because it's
Sure,
laying out a
if I throw
clear-
flour on it, did I treat it? No,
Well,
they can't write that.
Right,
No, they can't
that's
write
what
it.
I thought.
They can't write it. It's clear that they can't write it. I know that they still do write it or
Yeah.
whatever, but they can't write it.
But it's saying like, will be treated if they find this.
But
Send
that's
us
not
an
a
amendment
special
and tell us
provision.
what you want, because it's too vague to know what
That's what-
treatment
yeah.
is. Is it a 1-year warranty, a 5-year warranty? Is it treated by a licensed person or not a licensed person? I mean, no, it's too vague. We don't know what they want there still. It clearly tells them that they can't do it. Scratch it out, tell them to do their inspections and renegotiate. No, they can't do it. But I know they do it anyway. Remember, not everyone's well-trained.
Yeah.
No, I know. We had this deal recently, I have one, and it's person we're set to close, actually set to close, I think next week, and the seller dies on us, okay? And now the family's figured out that they're selling at a loss, so they gotta go. Here now, it has to be probated and there's a stake, and so we're having to do this work. Is the seller still obligated under the contract if John Smith was the seller and John's dead now, and we probate the will and it's the estate of John Smith until it's probated, and now it's Ginger Smith over here is the owner? Is Ginger obligated to John's deal? And in the contract, he's not. They're not. But under the probate law of the state of Texas, they are obligated over here. The estate is obligated of what they've inherited over there. And so it's not specific to the contract because they're saying, well, this person doesn't have specific enforcement or whatever, but through not even the property code, but through the probate code, they are obligated, and the courts have determined that that estate has to still abide by the contract that they were in, and we're headed down that path or whatever. So just one more example. The law is very complicated. There's some lawyers over here, they can figure it all out. But I mean, there's not just one resource. It can't just. I don't care what the Texas Association of Realtors says about that deal, because they're looking just from that real estate perspective, but there are other courts, there are other mechanisms that are in play.
Would it be the same way if there was a buyer who died?
Well, the courts on specific performance have never really enforced specific performance from the buyer's side. There's no real instance of it going there, so you can't make a buyer buy in that instance, unless there's just fraud or deceit, or they were doing something manipulative. So no, there'd be no specific.
Unless they're getting a really good deal, very few people are gonna be willing to wait out probate, so.
Well, that's right.
Like those people, they'll wait because they were underpriced already, so.
Right. Yes, Brandon?
What happens to the earnest money if the buyer dies?
If the buy, and so it's still in play at the title company or whatever. If they go to closing, then it would be credited. If they agree to terminate, it would be refunded wherever they've decided that it goes. And if they just never can be in agreement, then it's going to go to the state of Texas general fund over there and pay off our water bill or something over
We
there.
ever found a deal where, if the buyer defaults on the closing date?
You know, the closing date is another, I don't know if they have the closing date up here, but I think they do. I mean, you're certainly not bound by I think even in the earnest money, it
Well, I had
mentions
that
the
one.
closing
We
date.
just kept changing ours to.
You're still under contract, I assure you,
I
in the
couldn't get the
event
probate.
that you don't meet the closing date.
Yeah, I would still want to send something to.
Okay, well here, it's probably right here again under earnest money, and I think it's still back.
Shoot, I had the one with the white guy.
Yeah, contract closing.
Does the seller want to buy
There's
a buyer
this
to pay
down my
him?
client, it was the last one.
I'll find it for you, but it's in here.
It's down.
Is it
Down.
down
Scroll down one more.
It's the last one.
No, I don't know how to scroll.
There you go. There you go. If you didn't close by the closing date specified.
Yeah, I mean, you're still basically, your deal did not terminate automatically because you didn't make the close date. There could be some other deal, but you're not out of contract unless you agree to a termination or the judge tells you that you're no longer under contract, but you are still under contract or whatever.
I need that page.
Just take a picture of it.
And so the seller is at total risk if he goes, so we missed the close date, and the seller jumps up and puts it back active right quick,
And told him.
well, it's illegal.
I know.
It's illegal. Someone's got to fight him.
Yeah.
But you're not formally terminated unless you have an agreement or the judge entering into agreement there. Yeah, the seller's primary goal should be to get the termination.
Well, they had mediation, and the seller thinks that the buyer should pay him for the time that he didn't.
And he might be entitled to compensation for a delay. I mean, there are reasonable expenses in the event of a delay, you know, through no fault of the seller, that the buyer could be held accountable to pay for that. Very well so. I mean, that's for either a mediator or a judge to determine or whatever. I mean, so there is a cost to
sold it
delay.
out from under the.
Well, I understand that. I understand
I
that.
think we got the seller to pay us some money, actually, because our people moved out, remember?
Uh-huh, right.
They went into an apartment and they go, well, shoot, we've been living in an apartment, and it kept getting extended. So we asked for more money from the seller
Absolutely.
Extra
It's
expensive.
negotiable.
to
Absolutely.
help compensate for the rent.
Well,
But these little deals are very good here.
Well, it's nobody's fault, but,
Well, why didn't it close on time?
because she was dead.
Oh, because that's the dead one.
There you go.
She's so inconsiderate.
That happened to the house in Stanford, the
And her husband was incapacitated.
But not the next day, right?
yeah, mine was in the hospital.
The next day?
I have a question about the survey on this contract.
Attention go.
On the survey, in, paragraph 6C,
Yes?
my broker says that the buyer has to
This is
pay
not,
for the survey.
it's not supposed to be this way. We just randomly grab something here.
My broker is.
Your broker is correct
Many people
there.
will be cranked off at me, but it's okay, I fight for it every single
You
time.
should. On this instance, we had been under contract, so we had a survey and we had the buyer put it in, we put it in the buyer's name for the $150 is supposed to getting in the new survey. We were
Oh,
paid-
yeah, one
there
of
was
those,
one that
yeah.
was 7 days old or whatever.
So
And
it's
that's
Oh,
what-
right.
at that point.
Yes.
They'll do a modification.
Yeah, the modification's been working out very well, by the
As
way.
long as it's in their name, it's
Yeah,
fine.
people have been
Right.
very, I mean.
Good point,
The
though.
the survey.
Almost in no instance should C1 ever be checked. Okay? Under no circumstance. This is, Brandon reminds me that they caught us in a moment of weakness over here on 17th Street. So frustrating. Okay, that was really my point. I wanted to go over a couple of those deals. I wanted to make you aware, here's a good place to start. Not the only resource, but I'd like for you to at least know that that's out there. The legal hotline, is one more point of reference or whatever. If I'm not available and you're embarrassed to ask me, which never be embarrassed to ask me. But it's, and I don't always agree with the Texas Association of Realtors legal hotline. And I don't, it's an opinion, it's not the only opinion. They represent Texas Association of Realtors a lot of times. And so there's contrasting realities that sometimes go on. But I don't tend to call them, I'll just be honest with you, I tend to call our lawyers or the Commonwealth's lawyers and say, pull me up some case law and tell me how this is really going to work over here. Show me these instances of what's going to happen. And what is it that when we start fighting, if we're going to be fighting for 3 years over these deals, who's going to really win at the end? So, but it's certainly, if you're in a conflict with another agent, it's very good to cut and paste and send this right on over because this is their association also. Yes, Jim?
Well, I mean, two issues. One is at Commonwealth, Del Fullen is an attorney.
He is an attorney. He's not allowed to practice law, and he doesn't represent the buyer or the seller.
Right,
He doesn't really represent us.
right.
But he can, he's an attorney.
He still give you
If you're an American citizen, you can have an opinion, but there might be a
Right.
contrasting opinion. So we have to be careful. What's good about that is he can explain the contract or the law, and how the
Right.
law works, but he doesn't represent anyone. So they're hesitant, especially now because he's just a fee attorney.
Right.
When he was his own little boss, he was liable for his own mistakes. Now he's not liable for his own mistakes.
And then the other issue is if you don't ask Bill Baldwin about legal questions.
I
you're
have a
not
lot of
protecting
experience on a
Bill
lot of these
Baldwin.
things, so ultimately the broker's the one that's gonna get in trouble here, like I say, without rarely are you gonna get in trouble, I'll get in trouble, you know, and so please try and keep me informed. I visit with agents every week about a legal issue or so, so I'm used to dealing with them. Okay, any other questions going on out there? Cynthia would like help selling one of her houses on Prince Street.
Yes.
Tell us all about Prince Street.
Well, it's 2 stories, all the bedrooms are up, it's got a game room up, so you don't have the little dinky bedroom on the bottom floor that you're walking through. It's spacious, it's 2,634 square feet, and it's just 146 square foot, and everyone that's seen it's just shocked that it hadn't sold yet. It's
The
got
one
a
next
million
door,
dollars.
very similar to it, just sold for $5,000 more than this.
The one across the street, yeah, just sold for $395. This is $386.
What neighborhood is it in?
It's over there,
Heights and
Prince, between 14th and 15th, just west of.
What kind of feedback have you gotten?
It shows great, it's clean, they can't
Timber
how
Heights.
clean it is, it's big.
People want a bedroom down, maybe.
No, they think the yard, they thought the yard was bigger, so we removed the plate set, and the sandbox, which took up 2/3 of it, And, it's your typical, actually, it's a little more space than you get in a lot of them, but, it's your typical little yard. There is behind it, if you're on, what is that? Where there were gonna be 6 homes, 2 were built, and then the guy went under during the recession, and so there's the slabs for 4. People have asked what that is, but,
They're gonna be townhouses.
yeah, that's what we're telling them. So,
It's
if you
so
have
much-
anyone in the price
It's so
range.
much bigger and it looks so much nicer than the others. I was amazed also. I was watching it that you weren't mobbed.
Yeah, everyone that's seen it, I'm asking them, and I can't come up with anything. I've changed
Price
it.
right?
I was on as a townhome for 3 days, and then when it had sold, I changed it to
I
single
saw that,
family.
yeah.
Is there a common wall?
Yeah, there's a common wall.
But it's freestanding, it's
It's fee simple.
pretty simple.
If you have anyone in the price range looking, that's a lot of space for the money.
It's a big game room
15,
upstairs,
23.
it's awesome, people love that.
Yeah, and the
game room up
master
there.
has a big sitting area off of it.
It's
All right.
a great house.
All right, I have one.
Go ahead, Devin.
I have a lease on White Oak, it's gonna be 1,500. It's the first unit, so you see all downtown, you see the park, you just go right over the.
2-2?
It's a 2-1. But we're redoing the kitchen, it's gonna have granite, floor, scrubber it's really clean, so.
Do you use the pool?
Yeah. Huh? It's
Yes, Jane?
a condo, the White Oak townhome.
White Oak Townhouse?
Yes, you can see everything downtown.
When is it coming out?
We're gonna start working on it this week to do granite, so probably in, hopefully December.
You can show it now.
Absolutely. It's not on the market yet, so I'm just trying to give people time.
Yes, Jane?
Either tomorrow morning or Thursday morning, my new listing on Kipling is coming up. It's a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom, 3 full bath house in Montrose, 2-story brick stately. It's gonna be in the high 7s, but really, that's really the hot one. The only, yeah, everything else is in the 8s. This one is almost all redone. The master bath isn't that great, but it's really a beautiful block, beautiful house.
Yes, Brad.
So there's a listing on 26th Street in Sunset Heights. It's a bungalow, it's 1,900 square feet. It's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage, very nice. It's a little close to Maine, but they're building a new house, custom construction that buffers it from there also, that used to not be anything there, and now there's gonna be an actual buffer there. There was an old building that butted up to the back half of the yard too, with an old house that they tore down, and the garage, and that garage actually served as, because it was built like right on the property line, served as part of the fence. And so when they tore that down, all of a sudden the seller's like, I have no back fence. And so we pulled it off the market, got the title commitment pulled up, got everything taken care of there, the survey we just got, and we're putting that fence back up. So now there's even more of a buffer. They're gonna build something there. So it's gonna be very nice. We're priced at $449. Whenever we were on the market, we'll revisit all that when we put it back up. But that should be going
Say
soon.
the
And
address
it's
again?
631 East 26th, and it's adorable. Some people here have shown it and
It's
had
a very cool house.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And it's probably the most house you're gonna get in a bungalow for the money, and that neighborhood just blowing up right over there. It's a good time to get in.
And they're redoing Main Street.
Jim, how's the historic house on 17th Street?
Oh, it's pretty interesting. 2 open houses there. We have like about 15 people each Sunday. Nobody's running there with checks or anything. Somebody asked me, is this a foreclosure?
No.
$379. It's between Shepherd and Bigelow on 17th Street.
Anyone else?
All
have
right,
anything?
yeah, I have a listing on,
Not in the store district.
okay, on Timber Grove Court. Gated community, 2,400 square feet, 3 2.5, with a game room up. The master is down, which is real good.
Is it a patio?
And it's like 166 a square foot. They're asking $399 for it. And it has all the new green things with you have a thermostat in every
Slime.
room. Pardon?
Slime in the ice machine green.
No, it's not licensed.
So
But-
when you say green paint, all new no VOC paint or solar,
No,
or
but
what do
it
they
has
have?
insulated windows, it has R40 in the ceiling, R50 in the garage. The garage is even central air and heat with recessed lighting.
Is it a patio lot? A patio?
It's a 4,400 square foot lot. Yes, a patio lot.
Wait, how
But
much is
it's-
it again?
$399.
Next one. Okay,
All right.
that's good. Thank you all.
So,
Hey, Brad.
Yeah.
How many stories?
2. The master bedroom is the whole second story, and you can actually walk around in there. It's like an attic version.